In many cases, the glassware you use for your cocktails may not be important, but there are some situations where it's really important. Welcome to the Cocktail Spirit from Small Screen Network. I'm your host, Robert Hess. We're doing a set of episodes here about the common mistakes that people can make when they're doing cocktails, either professional bartenders or people at home making cocktails for their friends. One of the mistakes that sometimes happens is using the wrong glassware. Now, in many cases, it may not matter that much what glass you use. Let's take the Manhattan, for example. The Manhattan can be served up, in which case you'll use a Martini style glass or a coupe that I've got here, or you can do it on the rocks, in which case you'd use a rocks glass of some sort. It really doesn't matter. The cocktail is still going to basically taste the same. You've got ice on the drink in one glass and you've got no ice on the drink in the other glass. But there are going to be cases where the glassware can be important, either because of a presentation style that the glass is doing, or even just a commonality of using the glass. There was a time I was in a bar once where I ordered an old-fashioned and it came out in a Martini glass, which I'd never seen anybody do that before, and it was kind of shocking to kind of see this drink I was expecting to come out in a rocks glass with ice on it, come out in a Martini glass with no ice on it. So that was a case of the wrong glass being used for a cocktail, and it really showed off. Another aspect is something like the Bloody Mary. You wouldn't want to put a Bloody Mary in a cocktail glass. You want to put a Bloody Mary in a pint glass or a glass of certain size. You could even use a glass like this, but you want a glass that's big enough that it fits not just the drink, but the ice in the drink. In the case of the Bloody Mary, the garnishes you want on top of it. In a glass like this, you wouldn't be able to put an awful lot of big garnishes like people sometimes like to do with a Bloody Mary. If you want a lot of big garnishes, you want to use a bigger glass so the customer is not fighting the glass in order to get to the drink. You also have drinks like the Ramos Gin Fizz. Again, for that, you wouldn't want to use a standard cocktail coupe. You'd want to use a Collins style glass or a chimney style glass, because one of the features of the Ramos Gin Fizz, which is kind of fun, is as you're pouring it in, you want the glass to have the foam coming out the top like a little teeny chimney, which is kind of an interesting way to serve it. Then you have drinks like the Old Fashioned. Traditionally done in an old-fashioned glass like this, but picking the size right so it's not too big of a glass and making the drink look that much smaller. Now, what I'm going to show you is a drink that I think is very important to pick the right size of glassware for it, and that's the Sazerac Cocktail. Now, for the Sazerac, you're going to pick a rocks-style glass, but since the Sazerac is not a drink that really spends time on ice, so it doesn't get the dilution from the water on the ice, you want to pick a smaller glass, something that's going to actually be more befitting of a Sazerac and a small drink that just basically pure booze, but not too much booze, because you don't want to take and overserve your customers. In this case, I've got this glass sitting here with some ice in it just to help chill the glass down, which is probably the way they would have done the Sazerac back in the 1800s. 1830s is about the time the Sazerac started coming into popularity, and throughout the 1800s it evolved over time, starting out as a brandy or cognac-based cocktail and eventually evolving into a rye-based cocktail with absinthe and so forth on it. So I'm going to leave that on the ice for right now and explain the other ingredients. We've got rye whiskey, Creole bitters, I'm using the Bitter Truth, some absinthe, and some simple syrup. Now, the original drink called for a sugar cube that you take and muddle into the glass to create simple syrup in the bottom of the glass. I'm just going to start off with simple syrup to make it a little bit easier for that. Now that I think the glass is chilled enough, I'm just going to dump the ice. I'm going to first coat the glass with absinthe. Now, I like using a mister to do the coating. Some people will pour the absinthe into the glass and spin it around and dump it out. I find this is easier to control the amount of absinthe you add to it, as well as you're not wasting it. Absinthe is rather expensive, and granted, we're only going to be wasting a few drops perhaps, but still I think it's valuable to take and use it like this. So just do a coating of the glass. Now we're going to put some simple syrup. For that, I just do a visual measure on it because there's still a little puddle on it. It kind of varies the sweetness based upon the customers. Then I'm going to add the Creole bitters. And now we're going to add 2 ounces of rye whiskey. Now, since we didn't shake this with ice or anything, I'm going to use a little swizzle stick to stir up to make sure the sugar and the bitters get properly incorporated. It's also going to mix some of the absinthe from the sides of the walls of the glass into it. And then I'm going to garnish it with a lemon twist. Twist over the top first to express some of the oils into the drink. And then some people don't like dropping the lemon twist into their Sazerac. Some people do. That might be a question if you're at a bar to ask the customer what they like. And there we have the Sazerac. Notice that the size is proper. The glass looks like it's a full drink, where if I did it in an old-fashioned glass, it would look like it's basically just a puddle on the bottom of the glass to a certain standpoint. And it feels more appropriate for that. So there we have the Sazerac cocktail, served in the proper glass, just like you should focus on doing when you're making cocktails yourself.